Hello, guys, and welcome back to Time Under Tension. Last week, we had a nice little intermission with an episode on Barbie. If you haven't checked that out, it was super fun to talk about. And if you've seen Barbie now, highly recommend going back and watching it. This week, we're going to be moving into a new series. We're going to be talking about energy. Now, energy is a super broad topic, and sometimes I feel like it can be a little bit like vague and intangible and woo-woo, but I think actually getting into the specifics of it and how it shows up in our lives and like how we can actually harness it and manipulate it could provide a lot of insight into how to approach different areas of your life.
Yeah, that's great.
So tell me about your experience with energy. Like, when did you first become aware of energy?
So I really want to start by saying that energy can be utilized as a word in a multitude of different capacities and areas. When I first got introduced to energy, it was from like an electrical standpoint, like outlets, like like something super simple, and then it transitioned to I need energy to be able to perform as an athlete. So energy's definition has, I mean, there is no way to define it. It's more defined by the conversation. And so to me, how energy is showing up in my life right now, that's different than those two. What um, first introduced to me during COVID, when I realized that there was something outside of me that was much greater than me, but that I was connected to it completely. So it was my spirituality, but prior to using that word and that verbiage, just because I was so traumatized from my experience of religion, I had to call it energy. And I knew there was some energy source outside of me that was connected to something deeper within me that was my true self. So now how I'm defining energy is actually how I define who I am. Like I am energy because I truly believe that if we're going to talk about chakras as an example, we have these energetic sections, these fields of energy that are in alignment with things like our third eye or in things like our um, crown chakra, our access to, our God, the source, and then like our root chakra, which is attached to safety and attached to security and sense of self, things like that. I'm struggling a lot with my solar plexus area right now and the blockage of energy that's causing me to have a disconnection with that self that I just talked about, as that connection to source, which is an energetic connection. So that's where it's transformed in my life currently. But I just wanted to kind of preface that with energy can be something that's utilized as a term or in our language in a multitude of different areas.
I think that's really cool that you backed it up even to like an electrical system. And that I think it's probably all of our first experiences with the idea of energy. We live in a world that's fueled by energy and we can see it very tangibly in the things that we use. And I remember I was never very like hands-on technical, but my brother is, and he had this like circuit board kit, and it was like this board that had all these metal pegs on it, and you would like put these little plastic pieces that would kind of snap onto the pegs, and you could create like chains, and then you could attach like a light bulb on one end and a like button on the other, and when you hit the button, as long as you had closed the chain, you could turn on the light bulb. But if any of the pieces were missing, you broke the chain of energy. And that started to create some awareness in my mind about how energy works and even the concept of energy leaks, which is definitely something that I want to talk about because I think that's where it showed up in my life a lot. But that idea of like energy not being created or destroyed, it's just transferred to me goes hand in hand with the idea of like we come from the source. Like God is the source and God is in all of us. And like you talk about God being like the sun and then us being like rays of the sun, like his energy is operating through us and he provides everything. He provides the air we breathe, he provides our capacity to breathe, like all of the things, like that's his energy working through us. And so it's not something that we create, it's not something that we get externally. And honestly, it's not something that anyone else can destroy or take from us. It's something that we can continue to tap into because it's like our root, our source.
Yeah, and as an intro podcast episode, I think it's important to talk about how we're going to section maybe some of these thoughts off. Do you want to run through that?
Yeah, definitely. So I this episode, I just wanted to talk a little bit about what is energy, what are we talking about with that, and maybe why it matters, because it can again just seem very vague. But I want to go into leaks, like energy leaks. Where is that happening in your life? And then like energy givers, so like how to generate more energy in your life or like get access to more energy in your life. Um, are there other concepts that you had thought about as well?
Breath work for sure, like physically changing your inner energy, your inner state. Just how food and nutrition is actually energy, the relationship between chemicals or things in our actual physiological system that is producing energy. Um, I just think we do these this last season or this last, I guess, series that we did um, was on mind, body, spirit, and I think energy falls into each one of those separately in its own kind of conversation that I think it would be really cool to progress forward with that. And some of those even overlap. Like when I think about energy leaks, I have a life coach named Lisa who I was feeling so much fatigue at work and feeling really chaotic and overwhelmed. And she helped me to access my energetic fields and to feel it and to become aware of it and to understand where I was letting energy that I needed to prioritize for myself getting through teaching 4 or 5 classes and where I was spilling my energy everywhere because I had no boundaries. So, for me, I'm not sure if that's where you were going with that, but just thinking about how that's both your physical fatigue, but also your access to what is unseen outside of you, your energetic field, which is more spiritual. So there is some overlap, I think, in all of this because I think energy is so complex and really can't be defined by human language. Um, but I think it would be really cool to see how people's initial thoughts of what energy is, how we can transform some of those thoughts to really progress into deeper aspects of exchange, like relationship energy, what happens when you're in certain environments with other people, how your trauma responds to the energy in the room. There's so much that I think energy can do to serve in our self-discovery journey.
Definitely. And I think it comes up a lot. I like what you mentioned about the body. I think that sometimes can seem a little bit obvious. Like when we talk about energy, we think about like having energy to get through the day. But right now, there's a massive movement towards like longevity and how do we expand not only life, but like health span. And a lot of that research right now is around mitochondrial function. And without getting like too dense and boring here, like we all know from school, the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, right? But it's what generates energy, and it's so important when we look at longevity because if your mitochondria are damaged, that like significantly contributes, or that is seen much more significantly in someone who's aging quickly. And so mitochondrial damage is a big deal. Like you need to be able to generate energy. That is like so important because everything in your body requires energy. And Actually thinking back, I think the first time I ever heard the word energy, my grandma would say all the time, "I need my energy." And it would be like Little Debbie's brownies and Dr. Pepper. Like she needed her energy. And she would say it all the time, like, I just need to go get my energy. And now looking back as a health coach, I'm like, well, yeah, because you're spiking your glucose and then it's crashing and then you need to go get more sugar. But that same thing happens to us like mentally when we're like trying to get energy from the wrong source, and it gives us like a little bit of a hit, but it exhausts us too. And so I think when we look at things that give us energy, it's like what gives us energy that sustains us. Like have you ever like worked on something like a project and you're just like on a roll with it and you're not really sleeping a lot, but you're like just getting it done and you feel like you have all the resources you need? Like that is that energy we need to tap into. So just being able to kind of go through how those different things show up, how we can identify where we're leaking energy physically, like physiologically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Where can we generate more energy? Because we're not getting it from outside. It's not in the Little Debbie's brownie. We're not like going to get our energy. We're going to generate more of it in all of those areas as well. So I think it'll be cool to kind of dig into all of that and show that they're not really separate. Because, like we talked about with the systems in our last series, mind, body, spirit, we separate them to have some kind of structure in a podcast. But to be completely honest, like they're all happening at the same time and they're all working together, and one doesn't exist without the other. So now that we understand that concept as the foundation, I think we can move forward with the conversation about energy with all of those overlapping.
Totally. I think it's the perfect word to really bring science and spirituality into a union. So that'll be really cool to see. I almost see this as like I'm having a bit of a brain dump moment here where I'm just more and more that you're saying is sparking more and more where I'm interacting with energy, the word energy, and how it's impacting my life. Because now that you're coaching me and having me fill out a check-in sheet that's assessing my energy level, I'm super mindful of that because my energy is so much more consistently affected by my nervous system regulation than it's ever been in my awareness. And so understanding even to that level of balancing out your nervous system, we are a system. And just like you talked about your brother, if there's one area where we're not connecting the system or having that particular thing plugged, we're not going to access the light that we want to shine to the world. Like we really have this light inside of us that needs this balance and this harmony and this ability to our nervous system meets our emotional system meets our energy field meets our spirituality, like meets our chakras, like all of that. All of these things are really this amazing union of energy that is specific to the person, that is specific to that person's light that they're going to shine to the world. So you know as I'm processing some of these things and some other areas where energy really shows up for me, I even think even down to the core of relationships, because I've been doing so much research. Mine's more in like intraconnectedness is where I'm finding a lot of my study, and in breath work. And breath work, our breath is the link that connects us to old stagnant energy called trauma in our life and the subconscious mind system that is 95% responsible for how we're living our life. So the fact that you can take an energy system like going from freeze to fight or flight to dorsal, you have to go back through fight or flight to access your dorsal state through the breath, which means you're going to have to be changing your breath to match hyperventilation, or like how you would be breathing if you're in fight or flight. You have to tap back into that in a controlled space, but it's still through an energetic response where you feel safe and you can access vulnerability to overcome a particular trauma in your life. So the interconnected piece is you need co-regulation, you need other people, you need connectedness to be able to heal fully because your trauma was caused by that same thing caused by another person or an experience in the world. Um, and when I think about the sun example and how we're all specific rays of the sun shining our own very specific light, we also are a part of something where we are one. And so each person shining light and connecting to another person with their energy is going to provide a healing experience. But in my relationships in the past, I had to really notice that certain people really gave me what we would call like not great vibes, or really good vibes. But that to me is like your energetic exchange. Your energetic field outside of you when you're interacting with another person is going to be interacting with a system inside of you, your nervous system regulation that's attached to your trauma, that's attached to your subconscious system, that's been causing you in your awareness to be, whether you know or not, whether you're aware or not, interacting negatively or positively. If you think about charge, like energy, plus and minus on a battery, depending. And certain people charge us, certain people deplete us. Like there's so much to that. But being able to understand our intra-connectedness to everything around us, including nature and the universe, I think calls upon this ability to bring all of this into like energy is like period, you know.
Mhm.
That could really be a cool way for us to understand and also teach the power of empowerment, which is understanding your ability to impact your energy through the breath or through awareness or through, trauma and co-regulation and healing and interacting with energy. That's why we are so disrupted when we stay stagnant as people, because we are not meant to stay stagnant. We are energy. We're literally moving. We're particles, we're atoms, we're all these cellular molecules together that forms matter. But, that understanding of the ability to change our inner state for whether it's momentum, like you talk about a lot, like you need momentum to continue to grow, to continue to push. Like once you start, you kind of get going and you get going. And what is it? Energy stays in motion until acted on by an opposing force or something like that, right? I don't know Newton's law is all that great, but something like that. We can think about ourselves like that, and when we start to meet this resistance where we feel like blocked, we have to see that as like an opportunity to free ourselves from whatever it is that's blocking us. Because the more we stay stagnant, the more stagnancy we hold in our body, the less room we have to move, and the more anxious and the more disconnected and all of that we become.
Definitely. And I love what you said about like, yes, we are separate rays, but we're all interconnected, right? And I think in this life, there's a balance. And we talked a little bit about this yesterday in regards to relationships. When you have someone in your life who's maybe draining you or feels like they're like sucking your energy. Sometimes I think it's not so much about avoidance. I think there are times when you have to set boundaries, absolutely. But being a light in the world means having to go out and be in the world and potentially being in situations that could be very draining to your energy. And I think sometimes it's learning how to change your frequency in the situation so that you can sustain your energy through that situation. It may require, you may not be like at peace or at your normal frequency level. Like when you and I are at home, I'm at my normal frequency level. I'm not having to like adapt or compensate or, keep my energy lower to help offset. But in certain situations with certain people, this, like we'll be riding somewhere and I know we're going to be around a lot of people and I just like bring my energy low so that I can sustain it more throughout that. So I think it's important as well to know like part of this is not just putting yourself in a box of like the perfect environment so you never feel drained. It's learning how to ebb and flow and manipulate your internal energy so you can accommodate and adapt to the situation at hand, but understanding like that's all in your power, which is exciting. Like, you're never going to be put in a situation that you can't handle. You just have to learn how to adapt, and when a situation maybe isn't for you and you have to pull out because it's, too threatening to your energy, or perhaps you haven't worked through that trauma in a safe environment so that you can handle it.
Totally. And I think, I mean, my mind's always going to go to breath work, but you can literally manipulate your breath to change your nervous system to have a different response of adaptation to a particular stimulus or response. So I would love to have in it like a section where we do a lot of breathing techniques and practices for everyone to have access to that. The more that I lead breathwork journeys, especially the ones that are stimulating levels of CO2 in the body that are moving energy so drastically and consistently that you are unable to do anything besides allow. You push through the resistance of the nervous system and you're really in your subconscious mind and able to fully process the amount of stuck energy in places from trauma or release that energy and create free space. You're using something that's freely given to you by God to actually change your biology. Like you're changing internally. And something else that I just wanted to mention here that I think is more in your realm than mine. I think it's the one that overlaps for both of us, to be honest. But flow state. Um, Talking about flow state and how when you are in flow state, you are like 100% present and activated with your energy. When you're in a flow state, it is like what drives people to want to play sport. It's that state where you feel like, wow, I could just do that. I'm doing this for like 3 hours and I had no idea it's been 3 hours. Like you are just in this state of this energetic flow where you are activated. You're in some sort of activated state where you're feeling a little bit of that fight or flight, but you're also in your ventral state, which is your connection and your present moment and your ability to stay calm. And there's this perfect balance. And it looks like that, like you're literally like in this like rhythm like this. And you're able to tap into something that's clearly related to energetic balance. That I think is something to also just call to people's attention because I think a lot of people I've worked with have been voicing their struggle with staying present and feeling motivated and being able to tap into creativity and imagination. And a lot of that comes when you can really understand your level of arousal, your optimal level of arousal where flow state exists.
That's amazing. And I think I don't want to cover too much in this one, but
Yes,
I
sorry.
think I said that last time too. No, I think it's awesome. But I do want to break this down into like good subsections, and I think that we have a lot of awesome things to go over. So uh, now that we have like a handle on what energy is and just some of the different realms that it can come up in, moving forward through this series, we'll kind of break down into like energy drainers, like leaks, creating and generating energy. We'll do one on breath work and just really fully cover the spectrum of energy and how it shows up in your life and how you can really like claim your power in that area and start to use different strategies to help sustain energy more in your life and feel. I think there's a huge sense of um, self-direction that comes with this, and I would say like connectedness to the source, connectedness to God, because ultimately like that's where we are generating all of our energy from. So being able to stay connected to him is going to be how we sustain ourselves through a life that can be very exhausting and can really threaten to crush our energy and often challenge us, tempt us to turn to outside sources for energy when truly we can create all that we need within.
Totally. I was just about to say, I think something that could be really cool is both of us sharing our own testimony of finding balance with energy. Because when you think about you and your journey with caffeine, I think that it is like so relevant to the world. I obviously can't drink caffeine, so it's like super different for me. I don't even have the option to supply my body that's experiencing limited energy and putting something inside to like upregulate. So like false energy, but I think it could be a cool way to dive into that because I think it's like this unspoken thing. And I also think, what you talked about in your cycle last night, like, well, I don't sleep well. Like, is that the like whatever? It could be any of these points. I didn't sleep well, so I wake up and I'm tired, but I need to train, so I drink caffeine. And then, well, when I drink caffeine, I'm using that to maybe not eat as much because I'm whatever. It's like this whole, and then when I'm like in that place, then I'm just stuck in my head, and then at that point, my mental chatter is bad, and then I sleep like shit again. And it's like, you know? So I think having access to someone with your level of expertise on things like, um, nutrition, on things like sleep, on things like recovery and rest, and on things like caffeine, and, like, having addiction to substances externally that are whether they're down regulating your energy like weed because you are upregulated too much and you're not using things like taking out caffeine or prioritizing sleep, whatever. And then I think for me, from an energy perspective, like I wasn't even connected to my energy source, which is my body. So I think there could be an explanation of learning to understand emotions as energy, like emotions, like your emotions are energy. And I think that area for me has been something where I've really had to grow because of my tendency to be super reactive naturally. Um, and learning how to respond and really sit with energy. Like, how can I sit with my emotions and how is that leading me to understand where I am experiencing blocks and how that's impacting my mental state and my, you know, um, really learning more around how breathwork has kind of changed my life with that.
That's great. I think we should start there next week. Go into our
Cool.
stories with it, and then the weeks following, we'll kind of break it down a little bit more into maybe more variety of experiences that maybe we haven't exactly experienced firsthand. We've seen it in our clients or just learned throughout life. And then we'll just kind of break it down from there.
Also, like, throw questions at us because it would be super helpful if people are like, this is where I struggle with my energy, or this is what comes to my mind with my energy, and things like that. Or you have questions about energy healers, or like whatever. It can be anything around the topic, but having questions about what it is that you truly don't feel like you have a good grasp of understanding on, and how we could tie maybe our experiences or what we know about it, or even just like spark a really awesome conversation would be great. So we can meet your needs and your questions.
Definitely. If you struggle with energy, like whether that's struggling with energy when you're in certain environments like work or getting through your day or feeling like you are struggling to have the energy to show up for your kids or your family, comment below. Like let us know what you're feeling, what you're experiencing, and then we can kind of make this even more specific to you because that's really what it's all about. And definitely always remember, please like, subscribe, and support the channel. Share this with other people. And then we'll start digging in this series over the next couple weeks. All right. Thank you guys for watching. We will catch you next time on Time Under Tension.